Welcome to the Association 4.0 podcast, your association's no-fluff playbook to navigating and thriving in Industry 4.0 or the digital marketplace. Each week, we bring expert insights to help you and your association stay ahead of the curve.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Association 4.0 podcast. My name is Sharon Rice, and I'm the Managing Director of Business Strategy for orgSource, an association consultancy. Today, my guest is Jennifer Pitts. Jennifer is the Vice President of Products, Programs, and Certification at the National Association for Healthcare Quality. Jennifer is a strategy-focused leader with an extensive background in growing the business of education and certification, as well as developing talent. She's worked for NAHQ since 2015, but before that, she was the Director of Educational Program Development at the American College of Chest Physicians. Welcome, Jennifer. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Sharon. Glad to be here.
Excellent. So let's have you tell us a little bit about your background at NAHQ specifically.
Sure. I started in 2015. It's actually been almost 8 years. It'll be 8 years in June. I can't believe it. And when I first started at NAHQ, I had about, I would say, 2 direct reports and probably about $2 to $3 million of P&L that I was responsible for, predominantly in the education side of the business. I came to NAHQ to sort of build on my expertise and help build the organization from that perspective. By fast forward now, I have 10 FTEs and I have about $9 million of P&L responsibility. So a lot of that growth has been in predominantly in new product development, but also, looking at building channels for our business. And so moving away from just individuals, but selling into academics and organizations. So myself and an entire team has really been working on that throughout the last 8 years. So we're excited for the future here at NAHQ.
So Jennifer and I have known each other for quite some time now. And one of the things that's been interesting, I think, Jennifer, in our relationship is that, and as I'm listening to you talk, it really has struck me that we followed in some ways some parallel paths. You're now responsible for most of the front office revenue that's coming in to NAHQ. And I had a similar experience when I was working with Apex ASCM. And it's also interesting to me how, we can do the same work, but for different associations, the actual association body of knowledge starts to impact the way that we do our association management work. And so a little while ago, I think we did a blog post with you, an article. And one of the things we talked about in that article is how you take a quality first approach to the NAHQ business. And of course, the NAHQ body of knowledge is all about healthcare quality. So tell us a little bit about that strategy of quality first as it applies to association management.
Yeah, I would say quality first for us is, starts really with the planning of everything that we do. And it starts with thinking about where we want to go with the end result of whatever particular product or service that we're working on. And so that shows up. We're very big into planning. We're very big into making sure that we have great project plans. We have documentation. We make sure that while we want to deliver the best quality product, we want to have the experience for both our staff and our members to be a very good experience. And we want it to be easy and we want it to be fun, right? And we want, it to something that we can continue to grow with and continue to replicate. I'm not saying that that's not done all the time in associations, for sure. But I think the disciplined approach to really putting together and hardwiring project management and that discipline into your work definitely does, I think, take it in a different direction and make sure that you have those quality checks along the way to make sure you end up, staying on budget, staying on time, and making sure that, for all of us that are volunteers have a good experience as well.
So one of the things that NAHQ is extraordinarily good at in terms of serving its members and its customers is kind of putting together the quality toolkit, right? I hear a lot about when I'm working with NAHQ, the quality toolkit. And I have also, just observationally working with you, noticed that you take some of those same tools that are part, again, of the member body of knowledge and apply them to association management. One that I stole from you as an example is the SBAR. Can you give it, talk to us a little bit about SBAR and how you use that tool, that quality tool, in your work as an association?
Absolutely. So an SBAR is stands for situation, background, assessment, and recommendation. To think about that for a minute. And it is a quality tool. It's not just used in healthcare quality, but it's used across many industries. And it's, I don't know if some of our listeners might also do sort of your main idea first. There's sort of that idea where it's like you're really trying to create a communication in which you get everybody who you're communicating to where you are at on the same page. And so it's a really great tool. We use it when we're trying to convey a new idea to a group of people. So what is the situation that we're talking about? What are some background points that people need to know, especially, if you're doing something cross-functionally, you're working with different departments, not everybody has the same background as you. So what are the background? What are the assessment points? So what have you considered already, right? Are you considering, are there legal implications? Are there governance implications? Are, whatever you're communicating about, and then recommendations. And it may not necessarily even be you're recommending, something, but you're recommending you need to make a decision and who needs to be a part of it. So we use it all the time. I mean, I probably get 2 to 3 SBARs a week from my staff, even very simple ones. And I'm able to make decisions pretty quickly because I know that they've considered the background. They know, they've given me information, and that I can coach them if maybe they haven't considered something. I can, chime in, but then if not, then I can, move things along. So we use it for very simple and very complex situations here at NAHQ.
And I think that's exactly right. I mean, one of the things that's interesting, so I coming out of a manufacturing association like ASCM, of course, we had, a similar quality toolkit because a lot of the quality tools were developed, to support manufacturing and lean as well. And then what NAHQ has done extraordinarily well is adapt those for the healthcare environment. And, it also occurs to me the way that you're using those tools at NAHQ, you're now adapting those for the association environment. And this to me feels like an innovative approach to association management, because I think we all try to do quality work, but, what NAHQ does for healthcare is systematizes quality healthcare. And you're also in application of that systematizing quality for association management. Does it feel to you too like this is somewhat innovative?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think we developed a culture in our organization where that is part of, it's part of our hiring practices. It's part of our interviewing. It's part of our onboarding. It's part of, how we manage. So we also, one of the things we do at NAHQ, and we do this with our leadership, we do this with our volunteers and ourselves, is, we kind of have that, again, that quality mindset and tools, is we do a plus delta. So plus delta is also another tool, very simple tool that you use as sort of to kind of get feedback from people. So it's kind of like, what did you do well? That's the plus. You're doing a situational debriefing. People use that in debriefing a lot. And then what could be improved? And then those are, you take that feedback and put that back into your process. And I think those kind of things work really well for associations because that's what we do every year, right? We have a lot of different stakeholders that we need to get feedback from. We are always looking to, make our events and our education bigger and better, right? We're not always just doing new products, but we're looking at how do we develop, better ways of communicating to our members and adding value. So yeah, I mean, I think I don't know how innovative. I know there's a lot of great organizations that are doing this, but I do feel like when you hardwire it into not just your culture documents, but then how you manage to day to day and using those tools, I think it does give people a way to contribute in that way. And it's been very successful for us.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, when I started working with you at NAHQ, which I think was in 2017, you were already starting to have a major virtual component of your annual meeting, NAHQ Next. And I think at the time, those numbers, those virtual attendees were, trending up, certainly not where they're at today. That puts you in a position to really be prepared in a way for the pandemic that not a lot of other organizations were. Can you talk to us a little bit about what started moving you towards the virtual component of NAHQ Next? And then how did you fare during the pandemic? How did those trends kind of change with the necessity of meeting virtually?
Sure. So we actually started a virtual component of our meeting back in, I think it was the first year that I was there. So it was 2016 that we started. Actually, no, I take that back. They were actually experimenting that with even before I came. So that was like 2014, 2015. And I think it really came about because many of our professionals have been telling us in our surveys and feedback that we get that it was getting harder and harder, and fast forward almost 10 years later, to get away from work and to get funding. One of the challenges that our professionals have is that they have traditionally not been given a lot of professional development dollars in their budget, unlike some of other healthcare professions who automatically get that, right? And so we kind of knew that was a trend already. And so we were experimenting with sort of a virtual component where we would live stream potentially I think the first year, like a couple sessions, like keynote, we just experimented. And so we could, people could register to hear the keynote at no charge, right? And then we said, oh, that worked. People liked it. I bet they'll pay for it. So then we kind of did did some experimentation with that. And people are like, yeah, we want to be there. We'll pay for this. We just can't get there. So then we started having sort of, kind of a package, an on-demand package that people could do. And then, we already had a relationship with a vendor. I think that was key to our success. Many people had not, and so they were trying to build that relationship and get contracts signed and all of that. And we already had a vendor and that relationship, so that was important. And then we had to change our processes quite a bit to move to content production that was all virtual and not live. So we would pretty much just stream the content, but our production for our content was still very much live, in-person driven. So the way that we work with our subject matter experts, the number of hours that we had for like our content specialists versus our meeting planners, like all of that had to be reworked from a resource standpoint, because now we were going to basically produce a show, so to speak, right? I'm using air quotes, right? Nobody can see me, but we had to produce a whole show. So that was, we had to kind of really look at our resources and shift that, but we fared very well. We, I think in our first in 2020, we ended up, getting around almost 1,600 virtual attendees, and so that was up from the year before. And then this year, fast forward to 22, we had over 5,000. So
yeah,
we definitely been growing.
That's a pretty significant growth over where you were pre-pandemic.
Yeah, we were probably pre-pandemic. We were about 600 live, and maybe we were creeping up on just having just as many virtual. Mm-hmm. So we were starting to get to the tipping point where we would have more virtual than live.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think when we look at that extraordinary growth, when I started working with you, you were about 4.5 million in top line revenue. And are you somewhere in the range of 12 million at this point?
We have a 2023 budget of around a little bit 12.5.
Yeah. So, and we're only talking about 5 years here. So,
right.
That you've nearly tripled that top line revenue in the 12 years. And a lot of that was very planned, very methodically planned over the course of time through your strategic planning process and your annual planning process and your operational planning process. And obviously you had to deliver the goods. So part of what NAHQ was able to do on the education side that I think was extraordinary, and your division was obviously involved in all of this going along the way, was you started to create this framework, the professional framework for healthcare quality. And you pull that through to different products like a professional assessment and then new educational programming. You're working on micro-credentialing. And this is all, in addition to being the certifying body for the profession as well. So this is on top of your core business at the time was obviously certification, professional certification. But then you started layering on more and more detail, creating more and more standards for the profession. Can you talk to us a little bit about that process and how it's turned into, growth, specifically in your area, which is serving mostly individuals, to coming up to around $9 million?
Yeah, I would say that, one of the things that our organization, I think, took advantage of was really to own the profession.
Mm-hmm.
We had a certification, right, that from 1984, it's been our core business. So we've been a certifying body, and to some degree, a membership organization. But what we really wanted to become was the trusted resource and the home for professionals throughout their career. And so we had pieces of that. We had a certification that was foundational. We had some competency modeling that we were starting to work on that was more advanced. We had some foundational content, but it wasn't really aligned to anything. So we kind of had a mishmash. And what we really wanted to do was, if we were going to bring people to NAHQ, not just for certification, but to bring them to us as that trusted resource, they needed to see themselves in that work. And so we needed to show them what a full competency model would look like. So many professions, especially those who follow a traditional career path of undergrad and grad and all of that kind of thing, they have a lot of those curriculums in place, and we did not. So we really, we got to work and we said we need that as the foundational piece. Then everything we build from an education standpoint can be built on top of that, and we can link it back. So it's a very practical, it's what people need to know. And then you can use that to get people to understand how their work relates to the competency framework, and then how they want to grow and develop. And then people can start to see themselves and potential career paths. And that's really the work that we've been doing. And then that sort of is that flywheel, Stephanie, our CEO, likes to say, for people coming back over and over again to their professional association, which is what we're here to be.
Yeah, because we essentially, I think every professional association wants to be of service to their members across the span of their career.
Right.
And so, one of the challenges is continuing to provide value to them after certification. And so now, and certification maintenance obviously provides value as well. But what direction is your division working towards right now? Where are you heading?
Yeah, so we are definitely heading in that, developing that career pathway. And obviously certain types of products and services are going to fall on that career pathway, right? And really helping people to see themselves on that pathway. So how do we take what we have, I would say sort of, I'm not going to say locked away, but, we have our competency framework. We have a lot of resources that are, behind firewalls and, in a learning management system. We're really just trying to bring that much more front and center so people can, again, understand what the framework is, where they are, what kind of career path they might be able to have. Some other professions have done this, human resources and others have sort of brought this competency framework and the way that people come to you to life, right, in a visual way. I definitely think that's part of it. And then the other part of it for my division specifically is to create those new products. And so we have a foundational credential, which is excellent, but we want to build our credentialing portfolio, not necessarily all high stakes exams, right? Because that's not what everybody needs. Right now, the pain is people need the more advanced skill sets to develop in healthcare quality. We have a lot of data that tells us while our workforce has foundational competencies, and a lot of them, their CPHQ are performing at higher ends of that competency framework. We have a lot of data on that. We still have a long way to go to build those competency levels so people can continue to be successful and organizations can be successful in their career. So credentialing products are definitely our number one priority, and really skill development. So getting into that space and then figuring out how those could potentially build up to more advanced type of programs is really where we're focused on. So moving from foundational to that advanced, proficient and advanced is really where our group is headed the next 3 years.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, you really didn't miss a beat in terms of growth, obviously. And which is not to say that you didn't have some adjustment to do at the beginning of the pandemic, like everybody. And and you're kind of learning about a new way of doing business, remotely with your staff and with you're communicating with your leaders and your members. But you did an extraordinary job with that, staying in touch with them, especially since many of your leaders and members converted to frontline staff. They have nursing backgrounds, many of them, not all of them. So they were in a real different place at the beginning of the pandemic than they had maybe been pre-pandemic. How did your communication with your members and your leaders change during the pandemic? And are there any aspects of that change that you're continuing forward with? They turned out to be a better way to communicate?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to understand where the psychology of your members are at whatever time that they're dealing with certain types of issues or crisis. I mean, that's your job as the industry professional association. So your communication needs to match the mood and what's going on, because you have to remain relevant to them. So absolutely. I mean, our communications, we didn't send maybe as many, emails that we're talking about our awesome products as we would have. We definitely got softer in the way that we, discuss certain things. We have webinars, learning labs, we call them, every month. We sort of switch that content to be less about like, here's some hard skills, hard hitting data analytics, to a little bit more softer. We did some social emotional learning. We did, some other types of content. We weave that into NAHQ Next quite a bit as well, which is our conference we talked about a little bit earlier, especially that fall of the first year of the pandemic. I mean, it was, we had a lot of sessions that were just about like keeping, inspirational and keeping people's, spirits and hope. That's what we needed to do. So a lot of our communications are that. We also got a lot just, tighter on, this is the action we need, or this is, no long emails with a bunch of stuff, right? People don't have time for that anymore. So I definitely think our communications has tightened up from that perspective, and we've carried a lot of those lessons learned into how we communicate now.
You and I, over the course of the time that we have knowing each other and working together, have talked at various times about change and managing change. And I know that you went through a lot of change when we were working with Chest, and then you've certainly gone through a lot of change also working with NAHQ. And some of this change is certainly market changed a lot with NAHQ. I know in Chest you did a lot on the digital technology side, and there was a lot of change for the technology that you were working with, and you're still involved with that in NAHQ. What advice do you have for other association executives who right now feel like, that everything is changing and they're having a hard time kind of getting their heads around that and keeping up and keeping their teams moving forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know if I have a magic bullet for that particular, like some great piece of advice. I mean, I believe very much in, you got to control the controllables. So there's a lot that you can't control. I've actually, interestingly enough, did a quick exercise just a couple of weeks ago about like putting things into category. Again, I use tools, I use quality things. I try to organize. It's kind of my way of dealing with the world. But I put together sort of a list of things in lots of different categories, everything from work to life to school to anything you could think of. And I started to just write down what are the things I can control and what are the things I can't control. And then the things I can control, which a lot of times is just how I react to situations or how my staff reacts to situations. I think about how I'm going to manage that, how I'm going to approach that. And I really just let all that other stuff go. I mean, you have to, because there's only so much that you can change and you can control. I also think from a change management perspective, you have to normalize that. What people were hired to do even a year ago or 2 years ago or 20 years ago. We have a lot of staff who are longtime association professionals, and that's wonderful. Like, we're really glad that they have devoted their life to associations. This is my life's passion as well. However, what we hired people to do and what we need them to do today is a very different thing. And we have to normalize that. It's not bad. There's nothing wrong with that, what they're doing. It's just, we need something different. And people are I always say this, either have a skill or will to do it. And sometimes you need to train them up and they can stay. And sometimes you won't be able to, and they don't have the will to do that. And you have to make changes. So I think it's, control the controllables, and then really start to maybe use some other tools. I've used 9box. I've used other type of leadership tools where you start to really say, how do I look at my workforce differently? What do they need, and how do I get them to where they need to go? Or in some cases, there won't be people, they won't go with you, and sometimes again you have to make those hard changes as a group.
A lot of the executives that I am working with right now, kind of across industries of associations, are talking about the actual change in I would say the sensibility of the workforce or our employees, the way that they look at their jobs has changed since the pandemic. This seems, I think, somewhat natural. I would say in general, I would characterize it. The feedback that I'm getting is that maybe employees are feeling a little less flexible than they did before. We're also hearing a lot about personal priorities in a way that we didn't hear before, that the workforce is kind of weighing, what is it that they want from their job and their career, and what's the work-life balance that they're seeking, kind of to achieve. And I'm wondering if you're seeing those same things, and if you are, how do you, and this is a really tough question to answer, but how do we maintain a certain level of productivity and still be really connected to our workforce and what their personal priorities are at the same time?
Sharon, I was really hoping you were not going to ask me this question. No, I was like, if you know the answer to that, can you let me know? Yeah. No, I think that's, absolutely. We're dealing with that challenge right now. We are still in a hybrid environment. We're trying to decide, are we bringing people back? Is it more in-person time that we need? It's interesting. I don't know. I think that the world is different. Pandora's box is open. We can't go back, I think. But every leadership book that you read says that productivity is really all about, unleashing human potential and getting people to do the work that they're best suited to do with the right resources and then have the ability to do that well. And so I think we have a lot of rules in place, like you have to be at your desk for, this many time. And, we have our association professionals wear a lot of hats because we have to. Well, maybe we don't, right? Maybe we need to relook at that. So I don't know the answer. It's a hard question. I would say that, always thinking about how to do that. How do I get the most out of my folks? And how do they feel that they're being productive? I would say making sure they understand how their job, and what they're doing from a result, like I try to talk about results, how that applies to the larger mission. And as long as they feel aligned, then, my hope is that they will self-regulate and be productive. Like, even if they do need to, take their dog for a walk in the middle of the day and they want to come back and do an hour later, like at the end of the day, I'm totally fine with that, as long as we are still getting our results. So I think if we think about results first and then how our workforce can help us achieve that, then you manage to that and maybe let some of the other stuff go that we've traditionally been sort of caught up with.
Yeah. And I think we're still, it almost feels like the pandemic's never going to end, right? But I do think we're still in some ways in the center of the storm related to how it's going to overall impact workforce trends, but not even workforce trends, real estate trends, right? All of these things that changed pretty dramatically during the pandemic, they're not shifting back quickly at this point yet. And that may be partially because we still have, these periods of high COVID, right? Where the transmission rate is high and we're pulling back a little bit and being careful. So I don't know if what I'll say is I can't certainly project where we're going to end up on this and what the workforce is really going to look like when we're past the post-traumatic stress of the pandemic and, we feel like we're on firm ground again. I think when you combine the pandemic with just generational trends with workforces, it's a really different world that we're emerging from, because even though I think millennials were the majority of the workforce back in like 2016 or 17, something like that, I don't think we were fully feeling the impact of just the millennials being our predominant workforce. So not only employees of our association, but then also the majority of our members, or maybe not the majority of members, but the majority of our members' industry workforce.
Yeah, we have like 4 generations now. Is Z in there too? I mean, 4 or 5. Like right. It's a big workforce, different values, different strategies. I don't think a one size fits all is going to work anymore. Everybody has to be at their desk. Everybody has to do that. I think it's really, honestly, if you manage to results in performance, maybe that's the way to go, right? Like, I know there's a fairness, right? There's HR and there's fairness and there's all of that. But, I think we could probably, as association professionals, do a better job of, I believe, of thinking of that first. There's, yes, absolutely human aspect to it. And there's, we want to be kind, we want to be, all of those things. But I think if people are performing, then it's fine. They want to come in 1 day a week and work at home 4, great. Let's make that happen, right? Maybe we go to 4-day work weeks, right? Finally do that as a society, because we want to value more of our personal time. And at the end of the day, we probably can be more productive. So yeah, and I also think as leaders, at least in my role, I've been, $12 million is a much smaller association than many of the listeners of this podcast. But, I would say I played a pretty heavy player coach role as I built the department. And then I would say, even as a vice president, I do that now, but I would say I definitely have to move away from that. And so much more of my time is going to be coaching and developing and then growing the business instead of, kind of in the day to day. And so I think it is going to take all of us leveling up and all of us thinking about, what our role should be. And, if you're doing a lot of doing stuff, we call it Task Island here at NAHQ. If you're in Task Island, you better find a boat, get yourself off of that, because you're going to have to spend a lot more time developing talent and thinking about how you work on change management across the organization. And if you're a vice president or executive, you should be spending 70-80% of your time there, not, doing some of the day-to-day work.
So you as a leader have really grown as NAHQ has grown, and as you've advanced in your positions at NAHQ to become vice president. Do you have like role models or leaders that you read about that you go, yeah, that feels right to me, or I really admire that person?
I do. Maybe I didn't put it down. Well, I actually had a couple. I wrote some things down, but so I actually have 2. I have one that I'll say is more traditional, and I'm definitely not brown nosing here for anybody who listens. But and then I have another one that's probably a little bit non-traditional. But I definitely very much respect our CEO, Stephanie Mercado. She has grown with this organization as well. I think one of the things that she's had to do, and I've been taught how to do, is you have to reinvent yourself. And you have to spend time thinking about that. What does that mean? I have different expectations now. So what are my behaviors? What do I have to do differently? How do I spend my time? What kind of level of emotional intelligence do I have to have now as a leader? And she's done that too. She started, I think she's 9 years in, almost 10 years at NAHQ with an infant starting out. And now she's got almost a 10-year-old. And she's balanced that, all of that, ups and downs. But certainly I've been really impressed with how she has to reinvent herself to be able to give what the organization, and of course her boss, the board of directors, what they need and what they want. And so I've had to do that as well. And that's what I tell all the people that will work with me and report to me and my peers, that, again, back to my comment earlier, you're not going to be able to grow if you're not constantly reinventing and looking at your skill set and saying, what can I contribute now? The other one that I have to say is, I might get his name wrong, but Vladimir, the Ukrainian president.
Oh, Zelensky,
yes. I have to say him, and that's kind of a different one. I know that people might be like, really? I feel like, he actually had a very different career path, did not set out to do the job that he is in right now, much like association professionals don't set out on that career path. And then they find themselves in leadership roles, and what a leadership, role he is in the world stage that he's in. But I've been very impressed that, he's kind of stayed true to himself. And he is like absolutely, the determination that comes from him and what you need as a leader to keep going and to inspire and to do the tough things every single day while still trying to be true to yourself and your family on a world stage is amazing to me. And I've been very impressed with how he's shown up. And I think that's important to me when I look at any leader. Yeah,
I can see that with you, Jennifer, too, because one of the things about Zelensky that is so impressive is that he didn't flee. He's in the trenches with his team, essentially, which is something that's very true of you as well. That you're not abandoning them. You're in the trenches with them and kind of bringing them along with you as you're continuing to advance, which I think is really wonderful. To kind of end our conversation today, tell me, where do you think healthcare quality is going? What direction are we heading? What's on the horizon?
So that's a great question. So we've been on the value journey, right? Consumers want value in their healthcare, meaning cost, and they want outcomes, right? They want a good experience. They want the right care at the right time. And that's what they want. And so we've already been going down this pathway, and, the pandemic just, exacerbated that. Right. I mean, and so I think that, we're moving to value, which is going to take organizations to take a very, very, very hard look at the way that they're organized, their workforce, in order to deliver that type of care, and that type of value, which is probably different than the workforce they have today. Healthcare quality professionals, a plug for them, of course, is always that they're at the center of that, and I think are extremely important for this transformation. I think also, we've already seen this, but care is being delivered outside of the the four walls of a system, and so is many more people who are taking advantage of the the telehealth, the telemedicine, home care. All of that. And that is not only obviously changing the business model of healthcare, but it's changing the workforce needs of healthcare and all of the professions that make up healthcare. I mean, I think healthcare associations are probably the largest of associations. I mean, healthcare is 25% of our GDP. So it's a big workforce. And so there's a lot of transformation that has to happen there. And that's where we at NAHQ think we can make a huge, valuable contribution is to workforce development and to the people that are doing the work. And then, I think it's going to be a very interesting next 3 to 5 years. I think there's going to be more action and less talking about the need to go to value, and there's going to be more action in how that actually happens. And we're here to help, our professionals and the industry of healthcare do just that.
That's wonderful. So thank you, Jennifer, so much for being with us. I have a feeling that there's some people who are going to want to learn more about Plus Delta and CBAR and some of these tools. If our listeners want to get into contact with you, how can they do that?
Sure. Absolutely. You can email me anytime, jpitts@nahq.org. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me there. And happy to answer any questions or help support anyone in their journey.
That's excellent. Well, if you'd like to meet leaders like Jennifer, I'd like to suggest that you consider joining .org Community. .org Community connects you with a vibrant network of association executives and partners, and you can learn more about us at orgcommunity.com. You can also read Jennifer's article focusing on excellence, putting NAHQ ahead of change at orgSource.com in our blog library. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this podcast, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and discovered tips and information that will add value to your leadership style and your association. orgSource specializes in positioning teams for success with solutions for technology, strategy, and marketing. Please contact us at info@orgsource.com or visit www.orgsource.com to find out how to keep your organization on track to Association 4.0.